Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm your co-host, Kevin, K-Daddy from Dirty South, the ATL, Hotlanta, Georgia. I'm a post-production master, filmmaker, and horror nerd.
Hey guys, this is your co-host, Ashley, Gorilla Girl filmmaker, lunar goddess, and cinephile.
And I'm your co-host, John Thomas, ghost hunter, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and demon pals? In today's podcast, we're going to be talking about demon possession. Grab some holy water, hold on to your crucifix, and join us for an in-your-body experience. We also have a special guest today. Who, you ask? Stay tuned and find out. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Cinematic, captivating, terrifying, and intense. Trap 2021 will return live May 21st through the 23rd. New categories, new prizes, and still no entry fee. Visit trapfilmfestival.com for more information.
Welcome back, everybody. Jesus, I can't even do this. Hold on. Oh my goodness. Hoo-ha. Okay, and we are back.
Now we all know Michael a little better.
Just a little bit too much. And all it took was 8 minutes.
And Ashley's inappropriate opening. Whoa, wait.
Wait,
you can hear that? Rewind. I didn't say that.
And time code for clip is 8:45.
That's going on our blooper reel. No, I'm just joking. Okay, we'll bring it back one more time. And we are back. Hello again, everybody.
Hello.
Like we said, we do have a special guest tonight. His name is Michael Barclay, correct?
That's my name. You said it right.
Hooray, go team.
It's super difficult to pronounce, I know.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Michael.
I'm a man and I'm 37, I think. Yeah, I'm 37. I've gotten to that age where I can't remember because I stopped keeping track. No, I run a podcast myself, actually. I do a podcast for a mental health nonprofit called the #ICare movement. You can look at everything at #ICare.com. Don't use the pound sign. Spell it out. I am a musician. I used to be Mormon, which we'll get into later during the episode. That'll come into play for today's topic.
I have so many questions.
I know. It's going to be great. You can ask whatever you want. I don't know. What else is there about me? I'm not that interesting.
I think you're pretty interesting.
I mean, I'm a person that's had experiences and lived life, done things. I make music, I make podcasts, I work, I do, things.
Obviously, we heard about a few of them during the ad break. And
1-900-800.
now I feel like we're all best friends.
Right? Don't call 1-900 numbers, folks.
Or do, I guess, but not if you expect any results, apparently. All right, let's talk about demon possession. Like, what do you guys know about demon possession? Where do you get your knowledge from? What do you know about it?
The Bible.
Which one? Lots of versions.
Anybody else want to take that?
Oh, Lord.
Kevin, you look like you were going to say something. What do you know, buddy?
I was just going to say, the most exposure that I've had to that subject is pop culture. So movies, TV shows. Obviously, I've said it many times already on this show. My favorite movie is The Exorcist, which is like the epitome of demon possession movies.
You would think that.
We have a challenger. Dun, dun.
Right. Well, so that one's pretty damn close. But have you seen Exorcism of Emily Rose?
My favorite movie, scared the shit out of me. Oh my God.
So the barn scene when he's up against, the actual devil basically in all of his forms, that is about as accurate as you can get.
They actually used the real recording from the Annalise exorcism for that scene to add a little bit of authenticity to it.
Yep.
And they mixed it in with other recordings from the actors and whatnot to, have it tied into the storyline and keep it connected and not separate the viewer from this actor and the reality.
Oh, I'm aware. That was part of what fucked me up when I watched that movie.
Such a good movie, though.
It was good. It was just like it was a little too close to home. So it was a good movie. I appreciated the cinematography and the actual acting and the writing and the fact that they used some of the original things. It just happened to hit a little bit way too close to reality. So So Exorcist is great. Like that was the first of its kind, really, as far as like being that spot on. So I understand that being kind of the pinnacle, but if you want something that's as close as you can get to reality, then it's Exorcism of Emily Rose. I didn't even watch that movie fully. I literally walked in, like I watched the first little bit and I was like, nope. And I went to my room and I happened to come back out to go grab something to eat from the kitchen as my roommates were watching the movie, like in its entirety, and came back out right at the barn scene. And I was like, fuck. Uncool, man.
Timing is everything.
I went and watched it in the theaters by myself. So yeah, that was a mistake on my part. I'm like, ooh, scary movie, let's go. Yeah, I almost pissed my pants. That's one of the first times actually. So
yeah, that movie was fucked up.
Yes, it was. How about you, Ashley?
I mean, we've talked about this before where I grew up with a very traditional kind of Hispanic culture. So we have kind of a different belief system when it comes to possession and how it manifests than you typically find in like theological, like within the Bible sources. So I mean, basically, and I'm kind of just oversimplifying this, but a lot of things can be chalked up to you've got a demon trying to possess you, whether you're having nightmares or you're sick a lot. Like there's so many sources and they're just like, yep, demons trying to get you. So I know I had a lot of really weird stuff happen to me as a kid and growing up. So watching The Exorcist was kind of, even the regular Exorcist was kind of triggering to me because of certain things that happened in the movie that I kind of experienced as a little kid. And growing up, and even to this day, I still experience sleep paralysis. And so, you know, you do research online, and one of the top things that pops up is you either have like neurological things going on or demon possession. And it's just like, really? There's no in between ground. It's just like you got a demon or you have some brain problems.
Right. You're screwed either way.
Else in between.
Yeah.
So obviously more stuff has come out since then, but when I was first trying to learn what is this, what am I experiencing, it was just like demon possession or brain problems, and you're probably gonna have seizures and die. And it's like, oh my god, can I pick the demon? Like, I don't know which one, but which is worse. I don't want to die.
Sounds like the supernatural WebMD.
Like
like two extremes, nothing else.
But it's interesting though, is that's the first place people go when they can't explain things. Like we don't know. A lot of people are experiencing the sleep paralysis. Probably demons. What?
Right. Well, and how do you get that across to the like everybody else in the world who doesn't believe in this kind of stuff? Like how, because they're just going to go straight up towards, like, you look at the atheists and those types of things, and they're going to go on the complete side of like, oh my God, it's something fucked up in my brain. When reality is it could be something supernatural, and it, like, you don't, like, if you're not willing to accept it, that's almost adding to the idea that, or adding to the experience, I guess, that like it could be something more.
Well, and there's certain things I've experienced during sleep paralysis that really are kind of hard to explain. That are, it's just like, I'm not so sure my brain really created that, because other things get affected during that moment in between. I call it in between the waking world and the dreaming world. So I just call it in between worlds. So when I'm in between worlds, there's some stuff that has happened that other people have kind of peripherally experienced during that time where I'm in that space. And it's just like, holy fuck, that's scary. I just want to have a brain problem. Can it just be a brain problem?
It's
well,
a
see,
tumor.
now you're just choosing, you're contradicting yourself. First you wanted the demons, now you want a brain problem. What do you want?
Right? Which one do you want, Ashley?
Come on, Ashley.
I just don't want sleep paralysis.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you with that one at all. I think I would actually choose the demon. Maybe I can get a little bit of supernatural abilities and like, yeah, let's go.
You think, but the thing is when you're laying there and your entire body cannot physically move, and all you could do is watch things happen around you, and the sounds are unbearable. like because they're so unbearably like loud, and the sensations are really weird and awkward. It's like
Yeah, that's fucked up.
that's so alarming on so many levels that it's just like, okay, maybe if I could address a demon and have my full faculties about me, okay, maybe then. But it's just like I'm laying there. Nope. Can't move, can't talk, can't do anything. That's just not fun.
Yeah, no, that's some scary shit.
It's like a perpetual state of vulnerability, like just not being able to do anything.
It's awful. But that's really all I know about like stuff. Obviously, like Kevin, mostly pop culture, things I've seen in the movies. And it's kind of interesting where, you get into, does art imitate life? Life imitates art? Because like I said, some of these movies are triggering because they're almost a little too close to home in what you've experienced. And then it makes you wonder, did these writers experience this themselves and they're just kind of slipping it in subtly under the guise of fiction? Because some of it is alarmingly similar to what, some of us have personally experienced.
I mean, like we were talking about with the exorcism of Emily Rose, that was based on the story of Annalise and her exorcism and her possession. And even my favorite, The Exorcist, that was based off of the Ronald Doe possession.
So going with the whole pop culture thing, I remember watching The Conjuring, and I knew this before The Conjuring, but they were talking about the different stages of possession when they were doing a couple of their speeches or whatever it was. But yeah, Kevin, do you know what the first one is?
I do. It is infestation, which more or less that's when like the objects are moving. It's the more traditional hauntings just to try to create that fear, create that tension, create the vulnerability, which kind of makes me wonder if when you think of other stories about haunts and whatnot, like could all of those haunts be attempts at a possession that just there's not enough power, there's not enough strength?
I don't think so. We can't sit there and say that everything's demonic. Otherwise, we start sounding like a certain ghost hunter on TV when he first started off. Everything's demonic. It's all after me. Wait, did you hear that?
Fucking Zach,
Yes,
dude.
but I wasn't going to call out his name.
Jesus. I don't care. That guy's an asshole. Fucking hated that guy.
He's toned down a lot, but in the beginning, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, because he probably had a whole bunch of shit happen that he was like, oh, fuck, my life is horrible now. This was a bad idea to taunt a whole bunch of demon people.
But I think that, Kevin, to your point, I think that more comes along with it than just stuff moving around and what you would traditionally associate with haunting. I mean, you have so much more manifesting with it. I mean, you have the strange smells, right, of like sulfur and rancid things. And then you also have people being reported of waking up with like bite marks and scratch marks on places that they really can't even reach on themselves. And so I think there's more that gets manifested alongside that than you would find in like a traditional haunting type scenario. So it's not just like, whoa, Casper broke a vase. Like, I don't know. I think there's just so much more that comes along with it that kind of helps you differentiate between what may be going on.
I would agree.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like it slowly progresses, and then that can possibly go into the next stage. Like what was the second stage, John?
Oppression. Dun dun dun. They experience speaking in strange voices, like normal range they can't really reach. Severe nightmares on a constant basis. Speaking to people that nobody else can see, losing track of time, stuff like that. Paranoia of something unseen, which would freak me out if I saw somebody freaking out over something like that for sure.
So it's basically stage one is it's externally trying to get in and just wearing you down mentally, physically, so that there's an opening. And then stage two is it's now working its way in. And then, and taking possession of the body slowly, I guess.
Yeah.
Not even slowly. Stage 2 is pretty much you're already possessed.
Okay.
Yeah, you're already kind of screwed there.
You're already there.
Which brings us to 3, Michael.
No, I don't know what it is.
You don't know what it is?
I don't know the stages.
It's possession, buddy.
It's possession. The final stage is full possession.
Man, I could have answered that.
I figured you knew that one.
You're fucked.
I feel like this stage is what most people think of when they think of possessions.
Right.
Like
they don't even consider the first two. It's just automatically, here you are, you're possessed, you've had it, you're screwed, you're done, whatever.
So what does that consist of? Like, what is that definition?
That one, people are hurting animals, laughing at anything holy, or refusing to be around anything concerning God, destroying anything holy, signs of a second personality, speaking in different languages that you don't really know. Face seems different, preoccupation with satanic behavior, but I know a couple people that are like kind of weird that way anyway, so maybe they're possessed. But
Right. And as far as the satanic behavior goes, that really is dependent on the person, because true Satanism really has nothing to do with demonology. Like, that's not what it's about. It's its own moral code, basically. So you can't say like every Satanist is, or okay, every true Satanist is somebody that has like demon possessions or worships the Lucifer on all of those dark level. Like, that's not how it works. The laughing at anything holy and the torturing of animals type of a thing, I feel like that's a little skewed towards pop culture idea of what demonology and what Satanism and like all that kind of stuff is. That's like basically, the conservatives saying like, oh yeah, the liberals are XYZ, like they want to kill all the babies. Like, no, that's not what it is. That's what you think it is, because you like, and I'm sure, just as the caveat, like I'm sure there are some people out there that do that. Like, let's not be, I'm not going to say that doesn't happen, but true real possession, that's not typically where it heads to. You have to be a certain type of person. Like your personality has to lead towards that. So if you're already a person that is kind of leaning towards violent tendencies, or you're against religion or those types of things, and then you're also adding in the fact that you're going down the road of some type of outside the realm Satanism, and you're like studying the dark arts and those types of things, then yes, maybe that's going to be something that you do. But for those people that just end up with a possession, it's not usually because they are like a psychotic mind. It's not because they're fucking with a whole bunch of dark art type of stuff, or they're wanting to go like sacrifice animals to the Lord Lucifer and all that kind of, like, that's movies, that's pop culture, that's not realistic. There may be situations that happen on those, but typically it's a large part of the time, it's a lot to do with the fact that like you're ignoring it and you're mocking it and you're making it seem like it's not something that could happen, and you're making light of the fact that those things are even real, and then almost inviting it in because you don't believe it. You're like, okay, well, no, that's fucking bullshit, that's not going to happen to me, so fuck you, Lucifer, fuck you, demons, like blah, 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 like come get me. And as soon as you start saying those types of things, you've bypassed all of like the animal sacrifice and all that kind of stuff. You're now into that phase 2 that you guys talked about, where it's much more about just how you are as a person. Like you're having moments where you're seeing or you're talking to other people. There's places that you go that are much less easy to tell what's happening. Everything that I've learned about this kind of stuff really comes down to demons, and unless you're in the realm of like the really, really heavy dark ones, when you get possessed, it has nothing to do with all of the cliche sacrifice animals, talk about God and he's fucking an asshole, like I'm gonna kill God, blah, blah, blah. Like those people are basically just full of shit, honestly. Like I don't buy what they're selling a lot of the time. You can tell within certain people, but when it comes down to it, it's demons are much more cunning than you would think, and they are not the types of entities that want the grandiose recognition of I am a demon that's possessing this person. They're much more comfortable and interested, honestly, in being in the background and just kind of helping puppeteer things.
Yeah, I feel like people that you can tell when people are bullshitting their possession. You can tell when someone is just bullshitting. They are not possessed. You can see it in their face, in their expression. You know when a person's just putting on an act. And I actually would like to take it even a step further. A lot of these stages are being referenced in terms of Christianity principles, whereas possession is not isolated to Christianity or Catholicism Buddhism or Hinduism or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like we see it referenced in all of these different religions, but it's also been referenced on people who were never religious. They were never spiritual. They were never identified as something specific. And, you know, at the base of it, I think it's just there is an entity out there that we can't explain, we don't understand, that is able to ride along on someone else's vessel. And it gets described by different religions as being something evil, like Satan in Christianity. It's applied to Satan and all of his 7 gates of hell. And realistically, I think it's just something we don't understand. And so it gets lumped in with a lot of things and assumptions get put onto it. And I do like the way you phrased it. I feel like when someone is in a truly possessed state, those behaviors that come out that are not their natural behaviors would still need to lend to something that they were already predisposed to or leading tendencies towards, or something they believed in. So if somebody is hurting animals or doing something very violent, it has to be something that exists there and is being magnified and played off of. Yeah, I feel like it's something that was already there, these behaviors. And I do like the way you put that in terms of how it comes about. You know, people think if you're not Christian or you're not baptized or you're not this, then that leads you towards being at risk for possession. When in reality, I think at its base level, your energy just has to be open.
Yep.
You don't have to be open to demons specifically, like, hey, what's up, you? Come on in. But just, you know, we have this gate around us, right? So then if you open that gate up, you don't know who's coming and knocking. Once you've allowed that gate to be open, if something does come to your front door and even gets like a finger in the door, that's sometimes all it takes.
Yep.
And that's where I think stage 2 really starts to lend into them pushing their way through that door that was opened. But it takes you opening the door, whether it's challenging, like, you can't get me. You're still kind of open, like challenging and beckoning it. Come at me, bro. And then it comes at them, bro.
Exactly.
They joke that the Ouija board is just a game, right? Can the Ouija board get you possessed? Not in and of itself, but all it takes is one person believing and opening up and opening their energy enough that they're like, I want answers. Someone come to me. Someone talk to me. Speak through me, which is why I think mediums themselves are super in a precarious situation, because they are inviting things to speak through them. That's a wide open gate. Take over. Just use my body and my mouth. And it's like, oh my God. Do you know what you're doing? And that's not from a theological perspective. For me, that's just an energy thing. Like, you are allowing something to come in and take charge of your vessel. How do you control when it leaves? I don't know.
Yeah, or what comes in.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing. So when you said magnified, that's the best word for it. Like, so when we're talking about those, like, you know, kill animals and sacrifice them to blah blah blah, all that kind of shit, that's not something that, like, you just have something possess you and then suddenly you're like, I want to go kill rabbits and sacrifice them to the demon, blah blah. Like, no, that's not how it works. Like, you already have some type of fascination with those types of things, and when you allow something in, like, you know, a demon or some type of, I don't want to call them all demons, but they're something that's outside your body, some type of a spirit that is outside your body, then they are going to basically press on those things that are weaknesses, that are, you know, things that you don't want the rest of the world to see necessarily, but that are innate to who you are as a person. And that's suddenly going to start to, you know, lend itself to something else. So like you said, when it comes to, you know, mediums and those types of things, one of the worst ways that I've ever seen that you can open yourself up to some type of possession from a negative spirit, because there are positive spirits. Like, you know, let's not go down the road of like everything that comes in is bad. But if you are a medium that has no clue what they're doing, then you are basically opening yourself up like a wide open door and window and saying, like, speak through me. Anything someone's paying me to talk to you like I'm their grandmother. So the thing that I go down the road of a lot when I tell the stories that I have is they are very, very cunning. They're very smart. They are not unintelligent beings. They know how to work the situation. And so if that happens, they're going to come and they're going to present themselves in the form of grandma, and they're going to talk like grandma. And they're going to say things like grandma. And then after all is said and done, the medium gets done with their reading and all this kind of stuff. It's not grandma, but you're too late. They're already there. And now you're fucked.
Right. And again, kind of not just grandma, like I know they like to act like little kids as well, and that's the whole Annabelle thing, which is a whole other story. But I mean, it's basically it possessed the doll, or asked permission to possess the doll just to get to the people that had the actual doll. So yeah, it's just crazy.
Well, and even on the kid level, like it's, again, that I feel like the children thing is a cliche born from movies.
Right.
Like that's, again, that now we're going down the semantics of what your consciousness is manifesting. Like if you're freaked out by kids, or there's something that has happened in your past that has to do with children, then it's going to manifest in some type of a way that is a doll, that is a child, that's a little girl, whatever it is that you associate. Like it could be something as simple as, you watch the fucking Shining and there's the two little girls and you're like, oh my God, now every demon that possesses me is two little girls. That's possible because they're not trying to take the form of themselves. Go back to the exorcism of Emily Rose. And when she's in the barn, she is no longer herself. Emily in the movie is not there anymore, or Annalise. Like she's gone. She is so far back inside herself that is not who is talking. And that's when the real representation of who is in you comes out. Up until that point, it's whatever it decides to manifest itself as, whatever scares you, whatever makes you feel vulnerable.
Well, and it's not like demons can read your deepest, darkest desires and fears. Oftentimes, at least from what I've experienced myself, it's what's in your foremind. What are you presently actively thinking about? People can do it too. That you see party tricks where it's like you're concentrating on something really hard, and someone else can kind of pick up on that, almost like it's a wavelength you are actively sending out. And so oftentimes, if you're afraid of something, it's going to be in your foremind. Whenever you're a little anxious or a little alarmed, it's going to kind of jolt up. And then you've just kind of provided the access to getting you even more on that heightened, frightened energy level.
Yep.
And I do think that, we're not running around seeing demons like just scaring the world. Like they are subtle, cunning, staying hidden, riding along on people. I kind of like to think of them as like energetic parasites. So they're in their host, and I have to believe that there's a reason why it's not just being outwardly there, because, we're not going to do a Catholic exorcism on a demon and hope this person who has never been religious it's going to work on. That's just high assumptions that we've got a Catholic demon here, like he goes to church on Sundays. I don't know. Like it just, it doesn't make sense. And so there's so much we don't know about it, but I would really like to hear your story, Michael, because you keep referencing some of your experiences.
I didn't know when I should bring it in.
I would say go for it. Bring it in, because I think it's story time.
So, and it's interesting that you go down the route of, like a Catholic style demon or whatever religion type of a thing, because my experience has to do with growing up Mormon, and I was on a mission at the time. I was literally, white shirt, tie, name tag, like knocking on doors and all that shit. And the way that it was dealt with was based along, at the time, the Mormon beliefs of what an exorcism was. It wasn't an exorcism like you would see in a Catholic church. But I do think that when you're talking about demons, where I attribute to like my experience to has to do with the actual full out reality of the battle between good and evil. The fact that there is some type of higher power, whether you call it God, whether you call it energy, whether you call it whatever, Buddha, who the fuck cares? I don't like, you do you, but good is always going to weigh out those evil types of things. They might be cunning. They might be something that, gets in and really bogs you down, but when you seek truth, I guess maybe that's the better word, not good versus evil, but truth versus falsity. Like when you get into that realm and truth comes out over anything that is false, then that is really what overcomes all of those types of things when it comes to these types of experiences. So keep that in mind as I tell these stories, because when I experienced them, I was Mormon, but that is not how I relate to things anymore. So when I was on my mission, I was probably about a year in, and it's a 2-year mission. So I was serving in Las Vegas, and the Vegas mission was my mission was the western side of Las Vegas, and then all the way up into Reno and a little bit into California. This happened when I was in Vegas. So when you're on a mission, you have companionships, and there's a senior companion and a junior companion for accountability. And then beyond that, there's a district, which is basically like 4 or 5 companionships. So like 8 to 10 missionaries. And one of the things that you do when you're on a mission for the LDS Church is obviously you're trying to teach people and get them baptized. When they decide to be baptized, they have to do something called a bishopric interview. So you take them to whatever it is that the church in that area has, like the bishop there, the presiding official of the church. And you basically, it's all he's doing is sitting down and talking to you and welcoming you to the ward, and commending you on your decision to join the church and blah blah blah. And before that, actually, before I get too far ahead of myself, the other part is you have a district leader. So of those 8 to 10 missionaries, there's like one missionary that's designated as like the leader of that district, and his job is to talk to whoever it is that you're presenting to be baptized and basically ask them a bunch of questions to make sure that the missionaries taught them what they were supposed to, and B is to make sure that they understand the material as was presented to them. And so they actually have a full consciousness of what they're trying to do or what they want to do, like get baptized, because you don't want to have somebody get baptized that has no idea what the fuck they're doing. And they're just like, sure, why not? So we went through that. My companion at the time was the district leader. He was the one that did that interview. So he went through, did that interview. Everything went fine to that point. And we were in a ward where the bishop was actually like a really great guy. Like one of the few Mormons that I know in my life that I actually can say 100% not just good person. Not false, not fake, straight up about the religion type of stuff. So he didn't even do a whole like interview with this person. He wanted to just meet them and say hi and welcome them to the ward. So this woman was about 79, 80, something like that, like old woman. Came in with a walker. She had a bit of a hip problem. And we got through with the district leader interview where they went through all of the questions. And then we were sitting in the lobby waiting for the bishop. And the reason that I say that the bishop was one of those people that was just kind of a good, wholesome person, like no matter what religion you associate him with, is because I think that really attributes to what happened. So essentially, it was me, my companion, and the 2 missionaries who had taught her initially. So there's 4 of us. And we were sitting there with this 79, 80-year-old woman with a walker and a bad hip, just like, that whole type of a situation. And we were waiting outside the bishop's office for him to come out and talk to her. And she started to rock back and forth and started to get really uncomfortable. And eventually my companion leaned over and said, "Hey, are you okay?" And she said, "I shouldn't be here. I need to leave." And we said, "It's okay." Like at that point, thinking she's just nervous, she's scared. And we're like, "Hey, it's fine. Like this, you're done. Like this is just, he just wants to say hello. Like that's it. He wants to meet you. He wants to, welcome you to the ward. He wants to make sure that you know that he's there to support you." And she calmed down for a minute. And then about 2 minutes later, started doing the same thing, started rocking back and forth, started getting really uncomfortable, and started saying even more fervently, "I need to leave. This isn't the place I'm supposed to be. I need to go. I need to get out of here." And we're like, "Hey, it's okay. Like, you're fine." About 3 or 4 circuits of that go by. And after the last one, my companion again was the one that said, "Hey, it's okay. Like, really, breathe, relax. Like, there's nothing wrong." And she stopped, and about 30 seconds later, stood up, turned to all 4 of us and said, "I need to leave," in a very different voice than what was her own, and turned around and started sprinting down the hallway. Again, we're talking about a 79, 80-year-old woman who came in with a walker because she had a bad hip. So she starts sprinting down the hallway. Thankfully, my companion at the time understood what was happening because he had experienced certain things like that before. Mind you, he was about 6'3" and 230, 240 pounds of raw muscle because he wrestled in high school before he came on his mission. Big boy. Ran after her and tried to stop her, could not stop her, so ended up tackling her to the ground. Could not hold her down on his own.
Wow.
Why would he tackle an old lady?
Because he understood what was happening.
Yeah, but since when did free agency get bypassed with possession? Like, even if I've got a demon inside of me, if I'm trying to leave a church, you don't tackle me and keep me restrained in that church. Pretty sure at that point it's like kidnapping, even if I have a demon inside.
Let me finish and you'll understand why. So after that, one of the other missionaries who was out a little bit longer and understood what was happening ran after and tried to help, couldn't hold her down. And it literally, by the end of it, it took all four of us to pin her to the ground. And at that point, the bishop came out because he heard that there's a lot of commotion going on outside and came over and basically at this point started to help exorcise or bless the, whatever was happening. And as that was happening, I was holding the left shoulder at that point of this little 79, 80-year-old woman who I thought couldn't walk very well and trying to keep her pinned to the ground. And as this is all happening, and as the bishop is kneeling over her head, and as she's laying on the ground and saying whatever prayers that he's saying and doing his whole basically exorcism type of a ritual. Again, it's hard to explain now because I don't believe all of the Mormon stuff, and so I'm like, well, I guess it was an exorcism. I don't really know how else to explain it. Something happened, but as all of it was going through, you could see, well, first of all, you could hear the voices change. There was and not just like, I'm talking like this, I'm talking like this. Like, it wasn't that type of voice change. It was something very noticeable that it wasn't the same person. On top of that, you could see very visible changes in her face. And the easiest way that I can explain that is not that her actual physical skin and bones were changing, but there is a very, very noticeable countenance change. Like there was different thing, almost like the over exaggerated version is like when you see those movies where the person's laying on the ground and somebody's trying to like suck the demons or suck the spirits or the ghosts out, and you can see like, oh god, there's like this man that comes out and then there's a woman that comes out and all those types of things. Like, that's a little bit exaggerated. It wasn't that pronounced, but it was very, very noticeable. It was not something that you could miss, and all of us that were there noticed it. Like, we all saw the exact same thing. Not just, and like I remember afterwards we talked about what had happened, and that was one of my questions was, what did you see? Like what happened? Like, what did you hear? What did you see? And the part that freaked me out the most about the entire experience was almost more than what had actually happened. It was the fact that we all had the same account. We didn't sit there and say vagaries like, oh yeah, you could hear different voices and you could see different things. It was very specific. It was very specific to what the voice was that we heard, what the countenance change was, like what happened when you could see something change within that person's face. And at one point she started to go into different languages that nobody understood whatsoever. Couldn't tell you what they are to this day. And then from that point, it turned into just straight up English, but very much like, fuck you, I don't want you, get the fuck away from me. This, like, every obscenity that you can possibly imagine, trying to basically tell us that we were all against her or them, I guess. And to answer what you said, Ashley, as far as like, why did we tackle her and those types of things? When she finally came to, she had no idea where she was, no idea what was happening, no idea why she was in a church, no idea who she was over the past year and a half, basically. So at that point, she had completely let everything take over. like who she was not there anymore. So when we actually went through that process of trying to restrain her, it had nothing to do with restraining the actual 79, 80-year-old woman. It had to do with what was there. So yes, if she had any faculty, I'm sure she probably could have fought it. And I'm sure at that point she might have even been able to convince us otherwise of what was happening. But that wasn't the situation. There was no even piece of her during that entire thing. It was very much and there was probably like 6 or 7 whatevers, demons, spirits. Like she was pretty far gone. And as we found out afterwards, she had studied the art of the occult. She had been very open to trying to become a medium. She had been very open to any type of black magic specifically, and went down the roads of just doing whatever she could to open herself up to all of that. So yes, Ashley, go ahead. I know magic, black magic, witches. Yep, go ahead.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Ha ha ha.
Nice.
You said it yourself. She was obsessed with the occult, dark arts, dark magic, black magic. She wanted to give her body over to possession. She gave her free will away. So why would you then force it back to her? Because that's where I kind of have a hard time with a lot of these possession cases where people that you hear about, where people are like, let's get an exorcist and let's help these poor people that need to be saved. Like, isn't it arrogant to assume that they want to be saved to begin with? Because if you allowed something into yourself, it's not like anything we've read where it's boom, overnight, I got my body snatched away from me. Help. It's a progression over time where someone opened the door and they kept that progression going. At any point in time, you can seek help while you still have your faculties and agency. I would be willing to bet she did not want help. And so but then force it out of her when she openly allowed her vessel to be that way and to be taken that way, then you kind of assaulted her because you put your morals, and not you, but the church put their morals on her. She did not see anything wrong with black magic because she did it. She didn't see anything wrong with the occult because she did it. So it wasn't like, please help me. I was this innocent victim and this just happened. It didn't just happen. She invited it in and she allowed it in. And it took over completely. And then y'all forced it out without her consent. Yes.
There's a difference between allowing, like there's a big difference between asking for like the black magic. You look at people that study those types of things and they're not asking to be completely taken over. They don't want to be in a place where they don't have any control of their own faculties anymore.
But you know
they're
the
looking
risk. But you know the risk when you play with it. You do know the
Do
risk.
you?
You do. When you're inviting things in and you're asking it in and you're doing rituals and you're doing ceremonies and you're allowing yourself to be a medium, you do know the risk because you're researching it. And I refuse to give people like this ignorance of, I just didn't know any better. If she was 79 or 80 or whatever, she has lived enough life to know. Like she probably saw The Exorcist. Like you live enough life to know what you're risking. When it comes to, you know, the stories you hear about children, yeah, sure. Like that makes more sense. They're naive, whatever. But when we're talking about adults here that are playing with the occult or they're playing with like the lesser keys of Solomon and they're inviting demonology and they're inviting those things in to then force it onto them and take it out without their consent, even though they consented to allow it in, then who really is the aggressor here? Who is the one that's forcing their notion onto somebody else? Just because we don't agree with the dark side doesn't mean that, like, I may not agree with drug use, but if someone wants to do drugs and they're not hurting someone else, do what you got to do to yourself because it's your body and your free agency. And sometimes bad things happen when you play with bad things, but we can't force our principles and our morals onto somebody else. We may not agree with allowing someone to completely take over your body and host it, but if someone wants to be a host because they're promised things, because demons are cunning, who are we to assert ourselves on saving them?
Okay, so if you're married to an abusive person and they promise you the world except kick the shit out of you every single day, that's okay?
For a person to leave an abusive home, it has to be that person that leaves it. We can ask them, we can guide them. We cannot drag them out kicking and screaming. You can't tackle someone in their home and drag them out of the house. We can try and guide them. We can try and do what we can, which is what you guys initially did, right? You sat her down, you were talking to her. The second she ran out the door, tackling her is where it's like, because it's similar. If someone, like you said, using your example, is in an abusive home and being beat up and they're being promised the world, I can beg and plead till I'm blue in the face. We've got resources for you. We can help you. Here's these books. Here's these articles. But I can't tackle them and drag them out of their house. At some point, you still have to give people the responsibility on themselves. And if she was in there enough for you guys to tackle and pray over her for 5 or 10 or 20 minutes, and suddenly it's all gone, then there was still enough in her to still make that choice.
It's like, what did they say? Like, change, you can't force somebody else to change, but it comes from within.
It has to. It has to come from within.
And to tie back to the exorcism of Emily Rose, but that whole court sequence of the film ties to a very similar scenario where it's like they're questioning how aggressive were you towards Emily in the movie, but how aggressive were you, and did you have the consent? Did you not have the consent? Did you? And in the case of the movie, they had had the consent because it was part of her church, and like she had gone for help and she had asked for help and whatnot.
And I think just like any other thing, whether we're talking about abuse or addiction or anything where someone is in an unhealthy scenario that isn't good for them and depleting their body, they have to want it inside or else they're going to go right back to it. And so by forcing her out of it without her consent or without her acknowledging she wanted help, I just don't see, like, especially when she invited it all in. Now, maybe that was the slap she needed to not go back to it. But if she was that old and she had been inviting it in and a year and a half of her life was consumed with her not being in control, then like there were signs there was a progression to possession. Again, I don't know. I've never been possessed, but I have to believe it's more than just going to sleep one night and waking up completely gone. And so I don't know. I feel like part of me is just alarmed by the story of this big dude tackling this lady, and not because she was 80 and not because she was a lady. It could have been anybody. The second you're forcing somebody and holding them down physically, like I know people felt like they were saving them. But what's the difference? Someone might think I'm evil and tackle me and hold me down and pray over me, and I'm going to be pissed. And because it's like you are physically restraining me against my will, forcing your morals and your beliefs on what's acceptable and what's good onto me. And I get it. Most people can say they don't think demon possession is cool in like the typical world, but there are many, many, many occultists out there and many people that study demonology that would disagree. I mean, we saw it on Etsy where people are buying demon packs to make packs with different, lesser demons and greater demons out there. And that's something that they're accepting and willing to do. They know the risks they're taking. So then would it be okay if they do go into that for me to force an exorcism onto them?
There's actually a whole subcategory of possessions within Catholicism. And one of them is subjection, which is when a person voluntarily submits to a demon or to Satan or to basically just being possessed.
You guys keep talking about will when it comes to these types of scenarios, as if it's a situation that you have control over.
She gave her free will away.
When did she choose that, though? Like, do you know?
You said, though, she was into the occult, into studying all of that stuff. The dark. You didn't just say she was into witchcraft or like regular, like typical psychic medium channeling. She was into the black magic. And when you open yourself up, knowing that you're calling things into yourself and you're allowing those things to take over, you notice a progression. You notice a progression when something is trying to invade you. And you can ask for help or you can feed into whatever cunningness is going on. And I don't know. I just think that that's the same can be said for addiction. People lose their free will when it comes to addiction. Their body becomes physically addicted. Their mind becomes, the chemistry in their body becomes addicted. They cannot physically stop, but we cannot physically make people stop just because they no longer have control over themselves with drugs.
But just like when it comes to addiction, when you're in that phase, it's a very narcissistic beginning. You're not going into it thinking, I want to have something else take over my body. I want to be completely out of control and let something else inhibit my body and take over from this point forward. That's not usually the way that it goes. When you study those types of things, you're looking for power. You're looking for something that you can control. And when you happen to have something that comes in and starts to take control over you, that may not be your choice. And by the time that it's too late, you don't recognize that. So just like you've said, who are we to say, like, don't do it? If she wanted to do it again, she can go do it. But when it's a situation where we can clearly see, it's like in that, it was painfully obvious that it was not her. There was no her. It was many other different beings, and they were the ones that were trying to control. They were the ones that were fighting. If she wanted it, she can go back and do more.
But I feel like we're
far be it from
personally
us.
dismissing like personal responsibility here, dismissing personal responsibility because it's like, well, they want power, they want this, they think they have control. Well, that's arrogance and narcissism, yes, but that still doesn't
Right.
negate the fact that people are very aware there is a risk and there is a trade-off. That by saying, you're going to give me power, I'm in control of my body, but you can come in too, oh, Katie. To me, there's personal responsibility there. They're willing to bypass and take that risk for power, for whatever promises are being made. Same with addictions where it's like, okay, I'm getting that hit. Now I have to take more to get that high. Like, taking more and more and more could lead to an overdose, but you don't care because you want that high. You don't care because you're now hooked, but you knew the whole time that it was a risk. Like at some point there is personal responsibility. They see it coming and then it happens. That's not saying don't help her, but forcing her into what you assumed she wanted is where I'm like, not okay. You're assuming she wanted help. Yes, she didn't know who she was for a year and a half. You're assuming she wanted help because there's a projection there by the church that every person who's lost control over their body must want help because nobody would want to get control over their body, complete control.
I'll open that up to the rest of you.
John's like, fuck that. I'm staying out of this.
This is not the Ashley and Mike debate back and forth show.
Right?
It's like trying to force somebody else's beliefs on you, or assuming that your beliefs are on the other, or should be adopted by the other person.
Like doing this in real time and having somebody like come back at me and like question things. I'm like,
sorry, I'm an ass.
But I had the words and things like that I've told people, and usually the response is like, oh, that's okay, that's interesting. And so to have somebody come back and be like, well, what about this? I'm like, no, yes,
no,
maybe?
yes.
I don't really know. I think that's part of what always kind of fucked with my head with that whole situation, especially after leaving the church and not being involved with all that kind of stuff. Because at the time, I could very much attribute it to like, well, we're good. We are God's servants, and we did this, and we exorcised the demons. Like that's what we're supposed to do. Blah blah blah. But like after all of that went away, it started to bring a whole lot of other questions into the mix, and some of those now are not even anything that I have thought about. Thank you, Ashley. But like when it comes to that kind of stuff, I think that's really where I started to, at least on a surface level, attribute the fact that like there was something wrong. Because if there's this person that what was the end goal of this person who's possessed? Was it the actual person that was coming in getting taught about God, about Jesus, about, whatever it was? As far as the Mormon church goes, like, was it the Book of Mormon? Was it the Bible? Was it the Doctrine and Covenants? Whatever the fuck it was, I don't know. But like there was something along those lines. But like it's one of those things where that was kind of the rationale, was this person, or if it was the one of the demons that was possessing her at the time that was allowing this to go forward, what was the end goal? What was the point? Why would they let that continue to a point where suddenly we're in this position where like we're on the verge of like within a couple days being baptized? And if you go through any type of religious, background, most of them have something to do with baptism. Varying forms of baptism, but they're all basically the same idea. You're washing away the bad and starting over new. With Catholics, it's the sprinkling of the babies. With Mormons or with a lot of Christians. It's the full immersion. There's a lot of things that happen when it comes to baptism. So with that, the idea behind some type of Christian or religious belief system comes down to, if that all is true, if when I baptize you, your like everything evil is gone and you start fresh, why would that be allowed by whatever was possessing her to get far enough to that point? Like, what was the goal? What was their end game to bring it all the way to that point? And that's kind of where I have a hard time answering that question is, especially now with what Ashley has said as well, it's, did she want to stay possessed? Did she want to be in that realm of not, like, maybe she was a person that just didn't want to have any type of control. Maybe she wanted to have somebody else take control. Maybe she got taken control of and she didn't want that. And that was the part of her that was trying to come out as far as like learning about God, learning about Jesus, or like take away the specific religion, learning about some type of a positive higher power. And maybe that's where it went. I don't know. I have no idea.
What was it in The Devil's Advocate?
You're wrong.
That you said that the devil's greatest trick was convincing people he didn't exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So hypothetically speaking, if you have this old lady who's been carrying 6 entities in her, these 6 elementals for a year and a half, who's to say she's not just going with it just to stay hidden? Like automatic pilot mode, go into these meetings, yeah, okay, here I am, I'm me, but then it didn't quite work out as planned. Or maybe she's bullshitting you and part of her was still in control being put forth, but she kind of lost out to the other entities, because it's a whole lot easier at the end when it's all out to say, oh no, I didn't do it. I don't know what happened. I had no control. Like you said,
Yeah.
At some point, isn't it just magnifying off of her? I don't know. There's so many questions.
No, and to be perfectly honest, like I have not followed what happened with her past that experience. Like that, all I focused on from that whole experience personally was what happened. I didn't know her, I didn't teach her. I was literally just the companion to the missionary who was supposed to ask her a bunch of questions to make sure that the missionaries who did have a relationship with her taught her what she was supposed to. I had no connection to her whatsoever. So I have no way of knowing what happened. Like, she could be back in the same situation. I'm sure she's dead now. That was like 15 years ago, but like there's a lot of things that could happen. Maybe she's still alive, I don't know, but like I don't know what happened from there. So maybe she did go back to that.
I don't know. Everybody has a mask they put onto the world, especially when it comes to church. So who you may see Sunday praising it up to Jesus may be doing a line of Coke on Saturday night, like Michael. And so it's like, and that's just, I know that's pretty crass, but realistically speaking, this may be a person who has put forward a very specific front, but the demon got in there somehow, didn't it? Now, I'm not saying that every person is asking for it. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is there was a vulnerability there that pulled it in. What was that vulnerability? If it really was like they were in a situation where their heart and their mind and they're questioning and they're open, and it's really just an incidental thing that occurred and they just didn't understand it and it was confusing, and their family knows this or their friends know this and the church wants to help, okay, but there's got to be more than strapping a person down and forcing them against their will.
And I guess that's what you just said kind of echoes what I was going to say. Like again, this is all of your questions are based off the fact that like this person or anybody knows 100% that they are going into this situation, understanding fully that they are going to have somebody else or something else take over their being. And I don't think that a lot of people understand that. Like,
but Katie
the way
knew.
that
Katie researched enough, she knew. That's what we're going to call the old lady. Katie knew.
Right? Yeah. No.
The way you described, she knew.
Whoever's possessing you is Katie. That's what that is. Katie got really irritated about everything that I was saying. So the idea that it's like a conscious choice. Like there is a will, there's a free will that goes into the fact that like, oh, okay, this is something that I understand that there is the risk and those types of things. That's warranted. It's like, you know, the first time you shoot heroin or something like that, like, you know, there's a risk of something really bad happening or it not being good heroin or whatever it is. Like there's a lot of shit that could happen and go wrong, and you know that. So I get that there is some type of risk, but it's also like the flip side of that is, what if you're going into that looking into all of those types of things, whether it's black magic, whether it's a cult, because all of those are actually interesting. Like I've studied a lot of those types of things, and I've never been possessed myself, at least that I know of.
Why do you suppose that is?
Fuck off.
Why do you suppose our 80-year-old friend did?
That's irrelevant.
It is very
That's irrelevant. Erroneous.
Because you're proving my point. Studying it does not leave you open to it. Being open to it leaves you open to it.
Sure. But to answer your question, I think the reason that I was able to study it and not have anything happen was because I studied it from a very analytical side. I didn't study it from a searching for something to fill myself side. When people study things on a side of, I'm going to try to find something that fits what I am searching for, I'm trying to fill a hole, then that tends to be an area where you go down that path. But if you're going down that path and you don't understand the full extent of what's possibly going to happen with all of that, then there are problems. Now, again, going back to your initial like shock and horror of the entire story, like I feel like we're going down the whole like PC culture of like, oh my God, you tackled an old lady? Huh?
It's not PC culture.
That's horrible.
It's not PC culture.
Like it's just like, I get that sounds bad, but like
it is bad.
I don't know how else to explain it other than you had to be there. Like it was not a normal situation.
It doesn't have to be normal. If you have an adult who played with things and allowed them in to consume her, 6 entities, not just 1, 6.
What would you have done?
Let her go.
Just let her leave?
Yeah, let her leave. I know that sounds absurd. Let an adult leave a building that they willingly walked into and willingly should be able to leave. Where does that line stop, though? If I feel someone's possessed, can I walk into their home, restrain them, and do an exorcism because that's the right thing to do? Why not? Because they don't want it in them.
Because it's their home. Because it's their home.
So that's the line.
As
long as they're on their personal space, it's okay to tackle them, to not let them leave, to go home. It's okay to do that. But we can't do it in their home.
It's a public space.
So we can attack people in public spaces, but we can't attack them in their private space.
Technically.
Oh my God.
I mean, technically, yeah. I mean, it's the same as with Texas. Like if you walk into my house in Texas, I can shoot you. So, you know, it's fine.
Well, according to you could shoot someone in the public space. You can't shoot them in their home. I just like... Where is that line?
Nobody shot anybody.
If someone's speaking in tongues at their house, can I tackle them in their own home and perform an exorcism on them? It's like, because it was in a church, it's okay to tackle them and not let them leave.
When it comes down to those types of things, my question is, who's answering? If it's somebody that is possessed and there is a partial, I want this to go away, but then there's another part of them that says, I don't want it to go away, who's answering?
I still can't force them.
Why?
Because it's not my body. It's not my choice. It's not my moral authority to assume it over them.
It's also not their moral authority to take over somebody else.
And it's not an addict's body either, but can I force them can I tie them down and force them not to take drugs for the rest of their lives?
I think the difference between an addict and taking a physical substance is the fact that you are actually injecting a physical substance into your body, as compared to doing something that could potentially lend itself to demonic possession. Is not something that it's not the same as like, I'm going to take a needle with heroin and inject it into a vein. It's, I'm going to go down this road and explore and study these types of things, understanding maybe this could happen, but usually those people are not in the frame of mind to go like, oh, it's going to happen. And then when it all of a sudden becomes a reality, it's a situation where you go, oh, okay, this might be a problem. But by then, when you say it might be a problem, it's probably too late because you have something else in you that is starting to take over.
Yeah, but people don't just start with heroin. There is like gateway.
I know, it's marijuana. That's what this whole podcast is about. It's weed.
It's not weed, but my point is people start on one end that they think is harmless and then work their way up to the big dogs, right? To the things that aren't harmless. So where then do they have personal responsibility? I cannot force somebody. Like, you're still assuming you know better and can control. What's the difference between you controlling somebody else's body and forcing yourself onto them and a demon doing it? Because at least the demon was allowed in. You didn't get consent. The demon got consent to at least come in a little bit. You didn't get consent. So what's the difference?
There is not necessary. It doesn't have to be consent, first of all. But
Nice.
there's a large difference between a injected substance compared to an intelligent being.
Yes, but if I allow an intelligent being to peekaboo in because I feel good with the power or I feel good with how they make me feel, I at least gave that being consent. I didn't give you consent to tackle me and do a forced exorcism on me.
And that's what you believe.
John, what are your thoughts? You've been very quiet. And I feel like Michael and I could go all night with this. So, John, how do you feel about demonic possession? What are some things you'd like to discuss?
I see both sides. My question is, how are you going to get permission from the person who's possessed to do the exorcism? You can't sit there and ask them, they're possessed. How do you know? Like he said, who's answering?
Yep.
Who's answering?
What's the age of the person that's possessed and how did they get possessed? That's my question. It matters.
That I don't. Well, yeah, and I understand that, but like, you still, how are you going to ask them, hey, do you want me to take this demon out? Like,
No, but it matters because if I meet a 40-year-old man who plays with demonology and tries to invite demons in, I'm not going to force him into an exorcism. He wanted it in.
but how do we know that that's what happened until after the fact?
Because
though?
we're sentient beings who can do our research. We don't go in just willy-nilly Buffy style exercising every person that has a demon. It takes social responsibility. Yes, well, it
Katie.
takes social responsibility to do your research
Katie.
and find out.
Katie, nobody's trying to exercise you.
Oh, shut up. It takes social
You're safe.
responsibility.
Katie, you're safe.
So then
It's
would
okay.
it be okay for me to go in and start force baptizing people so they don't get demon possessions? Is if I believe that a certain thing protects people from demons just to make sure that they don't accidentally get tricked because people have zero personal responsibility in this, is it okay for me to start going forcefully throwing holy water on people to make sure they don't get possessed every day? Like, where is that line?
That's not the way that it works. That's not the way that baptism works, but
I'm not talking about baptism. If I find something that works on preventing demon possessions, can I go and do that to everybody, forcing that to make sure they don't get their free agency forced away from them, tricked away, or whatever? Like, I feel like there's just a line that is being ignored. Like, it's okay because my morals are right. And so...
Katie,
Cool.
Katie, it's okay. Kevin, what do you have
That's
to
how
say?
you know when he doesn't know what else to say, when he just starts patronizing me.
I mean, like you actually sparked a question. It's say somebody that practices and believes in the Mormon church becomes possessed. If a person comes along that's Catholic and tries to exercise the Mormon, because the beliefs are slightly different and the rituals are different and the prayers are different and everything, can the Catholic still exercise the Mormon? Or because of the beliefs of the Mormon, does that almost act like a barrier or a shield towards Catholic rituals?
With the way I feel about religion in general, I'm pretty sure it goes both ways. Like, it could work either way. Like, that comes down to, if you believe in God, then whatever works. Like, if you're Mormon, Jewish, Buddhist, Muslim, Catholic, Christian, whatever, like, I think it works both ways, because at that point, that's where I've gotten to, is you're dealing with good versus evil at that point. Religion is man-made. So when you're dealing with like what sect of religion it is, yeah, the words might be different, the prayers might be different, the beliefs might be different, whatever it is. But in those types of scenarios, like, I don't think that, if you believe in a God that actually does exorcise demons, I'm pretty sure that God is not going to judge based on the fact that, like, it's a Catholic priest that is exorcising a Mormon, and he's going to be like, whoa, hold on, we're crossing wires here. Hang on.
So what if the person who's possessed and the demon don't believe in God?
How long are these episodes? No, I think there's a lot of, like, I appreciate the devil's advocate side of things. Like, it's definitely stuff that I haven't thought about on certain levels when it comes to these types of things. The only thing I can say is it's different when you see it and experience it as compared to hearing stories about it. Like you don't, it's the whole, like if you had a gun pointed at your head and it was literally somebody who was going to shoot you, like, you know, what would you do? Like we would all love to think that we have like the Jackie Chan reflexes of like, I'm going to smack the gun out of their hand and fucking take them down or whatever. You don't know. Like you have no idea what that paralysis feels like. So it's, who knows what a lot of those what ifs could have been. I just know what my experience was.
Yeah, I totally respect that.
Bitch needed to be tackled.
Oh my God.
And the one thing I want to say really quick is, unless I say something different at a different time, every one of you have my permission to tackle me and exercise me if need be. You have my explicit consent.
It's recorded.
Kevin just wants to be touched. That's all.
I will slap the demon shit out of you.
Yes.
I'm with him though. Like if something happens to me, like Ashley, please God tackle me and just, you know, all of you tackle me.
You want the puppy pile?
Puppy pile.
Ashley,
Big old
Ashley on the
dog
bottom,
pile.
and then
Gotcha.
everybody else. Yay! No, I feel like this is a topic that can go on and on and on. So there's plenty to be talked about when it comes to these types of things, mostly because we don't know.
We don't know.
There's not enough factual information to like it. Yeah, my experience is one thing, but that's my experience and it's also from my perspective. That doesn't mean that what I saw or what I experienced, like there's a lot of things that happened during that experience that, you know, adrenaline spiked and there's who knows, like there's lots of things that could have come from that.
Well, I think of it the way you said, that it's not just demons out there. There are light beings and, you know, elements out there that are on the good side of the battle, if you will, or the good side of the spectrum, the light side. And so I have to believe that there are light things out there capable of doing light work and healing work and all of those other counterparts to demons. Maybe there's just a level of dimensional species we're not aware of that's able to come in and out. And we can't conceptualize it because it is in that dimension or 2 or 3 above us.
I think it's possible.
Well, I think this has been a really awesome conversation, guys. Does anyone have any final thoughts or any wrap-up comments?
Katie, we love you. There's nothing wrong with you being there.
So I'm just gonna say, I think you're possessed, Michael, because you knew about the comic book talk from the last recording. So
I know all. John, do you have any last thoughts? You're so quiet over there. You're just like chilling down in the bottom corner.
I know. I like watching mom and dad argue and fight. So that's basically all that was.
Oh, you get to be dad this time, Michael. Usually it's Kevin.
thank God.
Yeah, usually it's Kevin.
All right, Michael, give us your website one more time. And if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
It's #ICare.com, hashtag spelled out. And to get in touch with me, you can email me at michael@#ICare.com. And that's, you know, if you got mental health stuff you want to talk about, if you got issues, if you got anxiety, depression,
You got a possession?
schizophrenia, possession.
Michael over here is your neighborhood-friendly exorcist, so...
It's true. I don't know if I would consider myself an exorcist, nor am I an expert. Also, just as a caveat there, for like, we literally, the podcast is about whatever people want to talk about. We just want to make the stories heard. That's it. So I'm not an expert. I'm not a therapist. I'm not anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. It's literally just a space that we can normalize the conversation. So #ICare.com, Michael at #ICare.com.
It's a good show.
Thanks.
Thank you again for coming on to the show. We will probably do a follow-up podcast because there's a lot of stories we didn't touch on, and I'm sure, you know, there may be topics we forgot to bring up, but we thank you so much for coming to the podcast today. And thanks everybody for tuning in to 3Haunted Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley.
And I'm Kevin K. Daddy.
I'm John Thomas.
And I'm Michael Barclay.
Do you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions? Email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to follow us on our social media. Remember to hit that follow button. You never know what's going to happen next.
Subscribe.
Say it one more time.
Subscribe.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more.